everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Adventures of a Real Estate Investor. I'm Susie.
And I'm Michael, and we're glad you joined us for this adventure.
So today's guest is super, super special, and we are so excited. Thank you so much for joining us today, Andy McMullen.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm really so excited to be on this pod with you guys. I've been listening for a while. I've known you guys for a while, so this is a treat for me.
Yeah, and we're super excited that you're here too, because yes, like you were even one of the very first people that we met, and this has been a theme in our podcast, but we have seriously met so many people, again, from Brian Briscoe's meetup. And just to explain the power, not just of Brian Briscoe, but of meetups in general, this is where we've met so many people, right? Like we're doing it from anywhere. You can do it from anywhere. It's just getting into those meetup rooms and actually showing up, because that's the hardest part. But once you do it a couple times, it gets so much easier. So Andy, we are just so thankful that we met you there. So thank you so much for being here.
Excellent. Yeah, I do remember talking with you early on, and you were a little bit, there's a little bit of trepidation about being in some of these rooms and meetups, and here you guys are now blowing up with a podcast. I mean, this is it's a crazy world, and closing deals, and have all your systems to tell me that you're closing deals.
That's awesome. So Adventurous family, we have a treat for you today, as Susie kind of alluded to already. But before we begin, Andy, would you mind go ahead and telling our listeners, our Adventurous family, a little bit more about you and why you started investing in real estate?
Yeah, sure. So I actually it was really a fluke, honestly. I grew up in kind of a small town in Ventura County. Both my parents were teachers. It wasn't that money was forbidden to talk about it, just that they couldn't really help me with it. They encouraged my entrepreneurial, selling lollipops and paper routes and referees and all that. But they didn't have enough to teach me, right? So when I first showed up, out of college, just basically a friend got me into a real estate firm. I was definitely the greenest one there. I was definitely the most green. I didn't know a whole lot. I knew a little bit about investing, but real estate, basically I got in because I scored well on one of those dumb kind of EQ tests, And oh yeah, that guy, he could talk to people. He'll be fine, And so I struggled for a while as kind of a commercial broker, office buildings, some leasing, industrial. And then it was kind of like, I remember this moment. I remember this kind of moment where I'm sitting with my boss, and the office manager kind of comes in, and she slides this check across the desk, and it said Irwindale Fund 2. And it was like a lot of zeros. And I would work with them every day. I'd never, ever even heard of that property, right? It wasn't even like part of our portfolio, wasn't even thinking and so I asked him about it. I'm like, what is this Irwindale? Oh, he's like, yeah, we bought this, 3 years ago. And sometimes these checks come in, whether it's cash flow or, so that was like, I had never even heard that people were investing in real estate. So from that moment, I kind of started transitioning that like, oh, I suck at being a broker, or I'll have great months and then just terrible months, and I'm just living off this income and other odd jobs in order to supplement it. And now I'm going to really try to learn the real estate game. So that's kind of the long-winded answer. I heard on one of your guys' show about a book called Multiple Streams of Income. You guys were talking about that at one time.
Yeah.
That was like probably the book for me. It wasn't that purple book that everybody talks about that, started them on their trajectory. For me, it was kind of like Robert Allen, a couple of these older guys who were kind of figuring out the creative ways to make money. So that was kind of what got me started in it.
I love that. We only heard like one other person besides you. You're two people now.
Yeah.
That I've actually heard and read Robert Allen. Yeah. So
yeah, I got into him when the Creating Wealth book was like, that was the game. That was probably like my Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I'm sure it was, and I know that inspired a lot of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the stuff that's in there, because it's kind of thinking about, being a business owner, being an investor, passively investing, and all the kind of creative ways to do loans, etc. So that was kind of the first one. And then Multiple Streams of Income, and getting to meet Dr. Cooper on, options and stocks and all that stuff. It was just like, This is a totally new world that even kind of the buttoned up guys in the office had no idea about, right? They're just kind of like, maybe they were brats from Wall Street or something like that, but they had no idea about all the other features of passive investing,
Yeah.
Did that same boss, did you go to him and pretty much ask him what he was doing, or did you then go and educate yourself?
Yeah, it was a little bit of both. Like he definitely, he started off in the brokerage game. And so, he kind of got his start in the brokerage game, investing his, commissions, et cetera, into other properties. And I was lucky it was this kind of company that had, brokers and property managers and asset managers, and I would be able to be the low guy on the acquisition team. But yeah, I learned so many lessons from him. He passed away a couple of years after that of really kind of a sudden cancer, but it was kind of him as a mentor, opening up this world, how to meet with people, how to talk about things. I was terrible. I was the worst at being like organized and focused, right? You can even tell, like, part of that book that excited me was like, there's all these other ways to make money, right? But for him, like, I really needed to sit with my deal folder and kind of understand here's the steps that you got to get through in order to get this deal done. Like, you can't just pretend that you remember everything, or that conversations that you got to memorialize things. You got to keep the propulsion going, those kinds of things. And then when I started getting development later is really when I kind of met a mentor that was a long time kind of teacher.
No, and I love that. And I
Yeah.
know like you like have been in the space longer than Michael and I. So like mentors change and mentors shift. But even in this space, like I know you have had quite a few deals. Just to get like an idea of like the perspective, could you give like little stories on like your what you would consider your worst and what you would consider your best? Because a lot of times we only talk about our best. And I think like to show that you have gone through it all and it's all still worth it, not only because of the deals, but even like the people that you've met. And I'm sure like your second mentor was like a huge push in all of it. So I'm just curious about those.
Yeah, he was. He kind of helped me with my confidence, right? Because he started to rely on me to do things, right? That I didn't know that I could do. And a lot of times we just pay kind of secret apprentice, and we just pay attention, and then we kind of, oh yeah, I heard him say something that I know I gotta, look up and understand better. I would spend hours kind of working. You guys are probably too young for it, but we had these like financial calculators, and I had to kind of figure out exactly how all the machinations work. But Susie, I've had so many just missteps, I would say, a couple of disastrous deals, I would say. I don't think there's ever been a deal that I've ever done that's been easy, right? And you guys know this, right? It's whether it's the lender, whether it's the people that you're relying on to give you the reporting, whether it's, are you going to get your appraisal in time? Are you going to get your inspections? Are you dealing with a landlord that's tricky? But one, and I'm glad it happened to me earlier. It was probably my first or second syndication. It was in Dallas. I basically was probably my young 30s, so maybe 15 years ago, 10 years ago. And I thought I knew way more than I did, right? And it wasn't that I didn't do some due diligence. Like, I vetted a couple of property managers, and I, understood kind of the numbers by then, but I didn't understand the amount of things that you have flying at you when you're really trying to do this by yourself, right? Because you've got to be on top of the manager, you got to be on top of the brokers, you got to be on top of all the reports, and you're also looking for other deals, right? So anyways, that deal was disastrous. The only thing that bailed us out of that particular deal, and I always tell people, because there's these 5 ways to make money in real estate, the appreciation, the depreciation, the cash flow, the loan pay down, and then inflation, right? This kind of hedge. So you've got some cushion there. And so luckily, because we had a loan where we were able to kind of pay it down, we were able to survive. But we lost, like, in the first 2 months, we lost our largest tenant. And, and that was one thing I'll never do, is like one large space that doesn't really fit, on other businesses. Like, this was Texas Car Title. They're never going out of business. But then the government decided, hey, look, you guys are charging way too much for these leases and loans. So they folded up, and now we're left with 6 months, of their rent, and that's it. And then we still can't get a lease. So things like that. I could go and we could spend, like, if you guys have me back, I could come up with like the 3 losers, because there's so many.
I have to do that. Maybe.
But I'll say that was one that I almost didn't bounce back from, because it was like, paying out of my pocket to kind of make sure the investors were okay. And, you know, I had a partner who had his own kind of personal, you know, trauma. And so some of his relationships were coming after, you know, it was just a sea of kind of, you know, frustration. But as you know, when you have those frustration plus learning, and that's growth, right? So.
Absolutely.
And I just you said something in there that I kind of want to tease out a little bit and maybe expand on. That was, you said, you know, taking money out of your own pocket and make sure that the investors are taken care of, right?
That's what immediately clicked with me too. Like,
so
did it?
You said it quickly. Yeah, you said it quickly, but I caught it when Susie did it as well. You know, it's like there's a lot of syndicators in this space. I feel like that wouldn't think that way, right? And I think that's why we align with people like you and other people, like, because like no matter what happens, like the investors come first, right? And it's like you have fiduciary responsibility like for these investors, right? So like you do everything in your power if that means taking money out of your own pocket to make sure that the investors are set straight. And I know like there's some other big syndicators that, you know, their first couple of deals or whatever, they had to do similar things to make sure they set their investors straight, which then propelled them on an even further trajectory, right? Because they like investors knew that that operator was out there to take care of them, right? Like you were there to take care of them, make sure that their capital, their hard-earned money is safe in the future. So
yeah,
this exponentially makes you grow.
Yeah, no, I think it's so important. And I'll be honest, I thought, okay, of course, that's how you got to run these situations. But I've since been an LP and have learned that it doesn't work like that all the time. And to me, that's just my personal preference. I wouldn't invest with those guys again.
Mm-hmm.
I've also seen it other ways passively where, you know, maybe it was like a contractor, right? And he was also the GP, and you know, stuff goes wrong and it seems like they're taken care of, and it seems like there's a lot of expenses that I'm seeing that are going out to that, but not really back to the invest. So there's just things like that you said it, Michael, when you treat people right, and I'm not even talking about just investors. When you treat your team right, when you treat the people that you're partnering with right, you know, family is not always easy, but you try to, right? And it just makes your job a lot easier. If you're doing the right thing, you don't have to worry about that. Some people will drop off, but you will have that person that will refer you business. They'll say, oh, you know who really took care of we had a terrible deal, but he really took care of it, and we got exited out okay. Is you know, Andy's, those guys. So I think that, and it's much easier said than done. Most people get into a deal and they think, oh yeah, I'll come out of my pocket if I can, but then it gets there, right? And you're really faced with some pretty tough questions about, one, how do I underwrite the next deal so it doesn't happen?
Right.
That's great, but now I'm dealing with this situation. So
absolutely. And like, so when I went and got my MBA, like the very first class they actually had us take, it was called Leading with Integrity. And like, this was all about it. You know, like some of the stories that we read were when the business goes like under almost, but you have investors in it, like you have to take care of them. Like it trusted you when you trusted yourself. And that class actually like carried with me through all the other classes. And I actually thought it was super cool that they started it with that, because like, if you're going in to like start your own business or like be a C-suite in a business, you do have to remember that you are leading with integrity. And that's what it's all about, you know, because if you don't, I mean, whatever happens, but just from like my belief, like karma occurs, you know? And so I know I do really, really love that you said that, because it's true and it's huge. Like, yes, it hurts us, but we can't just take other people down completely so that it doesn't hurt us this much less, because just a different part of us hurts then. And that defeats the whole purpose, right? Like, we're in real estate investing. Well, a lot of us are to like impact people. We don't want to negatively impact people. We're trying to stay away from that.
You know, one of my partners, he had a terrible deal where they were in the middle of an exchange and the accommodator stole the investor's money. Oh. So they're trading out of a deal. The accommodator steals their money. Like what is he supposed to do? He doesn't have that money, all of it, basically most of it. So what he did is he said, hey, look, the only thing that I can do is get you in the next deal that I've got. And he did. He got all of those investors in the deal for the same amount of money that they did, and he returned it over time, right? And so there's always a solution. You know what I love about your guys' show, which I think there's probably somebody out there that's thinking like, come on, man, I've heard this all before about taking care of your investors and, oh, isn't it great that you, Andy, have integrity and all that stuff. But when you listen to your guys' show, like you are inspiring people. So it's not like anybody out that's come on your pod is cocky in a cocky way. But like if Dr. Erin doesn't get on and tell all the cool things that she's doing, right? Even if it could sound to somebody like that self-serving, then nobody else will know that you can, build $5,500, homes in Belize. So anyways, I just wanted people to, so there's some people thinking, gosh, if I have to hear about an operator talk about how great he is or the things that he's doing, I'll puke. But it's really to kind of help those people that are saying, hey, look, I just need a little push and I just need a little bit of inspiration. And you guys are helping people that way.
Yeah, and that's really what it is. It's just like the inspiration, because like our big thing is we just want other people to hear multiple ideas so then they can kind of come up with their own, like, oh, this idea seems really big, but if she did it, then I can do it. And if this idea, I think I could do that, but maybe I could go one step above. So it's like just bringing all of that together is really what we're trying to do.
Yeah, it's such a great idea for a podcast.
Thanks.
So anyways, that's kind of my little rant about that.
So something that I do like love about you, and I've like watched your webinars and even on this past deal, is apartment life. And I don't think a lot of people know about that because I had no idea what it was. So could you tell us about that? Because I think that's a huge impact on the like families, and that's also who we need to serve because they also deserve to be treated as people.
That's right. This is exactly right. This is their home. So people, they leave for their job and they come home, and hopefully, and my belief, what God wants for us is community. So when they come home, they want to be able to, know who their neighbors are, have the kids in the street. Now, I can't take credit for apartment life because we were a partner in the deal. We, helped them raise money for it, quite a couple $1,000,000 for it. But this was introduced to me from Justin Frazier and Megan Lamke. If you haven't had Megan on yet, You should definitely have Megan on. Justin as well, and Matt Faircloth. But the apartment life was really about why not create a community? So like think of in college, you had your RAs right on the floor, and they kind of knew you could always kind of bounce ideas. They all kind of always knew what was going on. Why don't we put a couple of those in our apartments? And they can have barbecues, Bible study, sports, games, all of that stuff. They'll organize it. So we pay them, Apartment Life organize it. And the thing that some investors will think on this call is like, well, why is my money going to your guys' charities, right? Yeah. And my response is always, forget about that. Imagine if you could have tenants that would stay longer. Imagine if you could have referrals from that. Imagine if you could see people that were out in these communities, right? This last deal that I'm most proud of in North Carolina, when we bought it, it was really a scary property. I mean, it had, the pool was a pond. It had, the basketball courts were torn down, the, soccer fields, all that stuff. The dog park it was terrible. The interiors were okay, but the outside was terrible. And so, what these, so basically we talk about on the board meeting, but it's really Justin, the one executing it, is as people start to see the paint and these communities cleaned up, and now there's a new playground, and now there's, the basketball fixed, and the fields look great, there's open spaces. Now people will bring their kids out again, right? Kids come outside. And so what our goal is from the fund side, so we've got our fund business and then our kind of our as operators, as GP operators and deal sponsors. On the fund side is really just to partner with world-class operators that are out there doing good.
Mhm.
Basically transforming communities. And so there's a lot of ways to transform communities. Apartment life is one, but you could kind of hear, all of the other thing is we gave Ramsey Plus to all of the tenants. So Ramsey Plus is kind of like a, subscription service where they can really kind of have their own budgeting, and it's not just an app, it's, coaching and the whole thing. So the hope and goal is that people will have their expenses and be able to move out to a new home or wherever they aspire to be. So those kinds of things, I think, if you think of it as their homes, then everything from there kind of flows out.
What feedback have you gotten from the people who've like experienced it, or is it not that?
Well, I think it's been incredible. Now, again, the asset manager is fantastic, right? And the property manager team is fantastic. So they're executing on these things. But when they start to hear feedback, which is like, I didn't feel safe in this place, and now I'm going out, on a playground with my kids, right? Like that's all you need to know. Like these people didn't know each other in that same way. If they don't feel comfortable leaving their homes. Part of that was like, I don't know, $67,000 in just like cutting down trees in these kind of awful breezeways and dark, so there was crime. It wasn't major crime, but once you start opening it up and you get the right people there and you get the bad apples out, I think there was like 15, 20 skips, which just basically means people just left their keys and moved on, which was great, right? Those were people that probably weren't going to be our ideal tenant. So anyways, the impact. So the reason that I'm so passionate about that part of it, Susie, is because I do think there's so much more we can do. We're working on a development project now. It's about 100 units that we're going to employ the same, community organization so that, people feel like they're in one, that's your neighbor. That's people that you actually know and your kids play with.
No, and that's great because doing that is also extra work, but like the extra work is worth it, like even if it's like just one person who even gets something out of it, it is completely transformative. But another thing I had in the back of my mind is your property management company. Had they like partnered with Apartment Life before, or was this brand new for them?
So I met the people at Apartment Life through another mastermind. I'm part of Kingdom REI, and so I met Sean Bailey, who kind of managed a lot of the stuff in Florida, and I was trying to figure out ways to utilize them, to partner with them, and then just kind of by coincidence, Megan Lamke, I think, introduced it to DeRosa. And I was just so elated that we were able to do that. And now I've seen other guys do that. But yeah, I mean, I think that so the property management company, that particular one, didn't know about it, but now they do. And now they're going to see how beneficial this is, right? And these kinds of things like that spread. And so, I mean, just if you think about your college experience, or where your favorite place that you lived at some point, it wasn't like, oh, I was kind of by the amenities or was by the beach. You remember kind of the people that you were, with or friends with, or shared those moments with those people at that particular time. So that's kind of what we want to create. And some people will reject it, and not everybody will use Ramsey Plus, but for the most part, if there's 20, 30 kids out there that weren't out there before in a 300 unit apartment complex, that's a win, right?
No, it is. That's like lots of wins.
Yeah.
So that's great because like not only are you like positively affecting the parents, right? Because that's huge in itself, but now the kids then have a new community. It goes down, throughout the whole family. And I mean, even like the biggest thing, I hear this often just with like, oh, my friends or my kids have so much energy. But like when they get to go out and burn that off and play, like you're also a different parent, right? Because a lot of times, like being proactive versus reactive, like sometimes we are reactive with our emotions when we don't know why. Like we don't notice our moments of weakness when really like we could be proactive about them so that we don't have to feel those feelings. So like that blows my mind because then different parenting skills come into play. It's all like all of the different pew, 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 like angles it can go in. It's just phenomenal.
I see it in my kids. It's interesting. I see it in my kids that kind of, we all remember being inside ourselves and like, oh, you know, what do I want to do? Like, what was going to make me happy? But like when my daughter is helping my younger daughter do something, right, she gets joy out of it. Like, it's so exciting for her to teach her little sister something. We've also got our kind of neighborhood community that basically our house, because the front yard has become kind of the place where all the kids and parents kind of hang out. It's almost like a virtual. Sometimes it's a little bit annoying when you got kids kind of running through the place, but for the most part, you're right. Like, it gives parents a break, right? If nothing else, the kids get a break and the kids look forward to it. So my point is that giving ultimately, as everybody knows, but doesn't always execute on, gives you joy, you know?
Yeah.
No, it's so true. And like joy really is something that we all need to strive for.
Yeah. I want to draw out some parallels here, Andy, real quick.
Sure.
So at the very beginning, we started talking about, you know, leading with integrity and things like that, and like making sure your investors are set straight and you're taking care of them. But not only are you taking care of your investors, Andy, you're also partnering with the right operators, and making sure you have the right team members in order to make sure that you are giving back and making the most impact you can with the residents. Right. So not only you're taking care of investors, but you're also taking care of the residents, right? It's twofold. And yeah, oftentimes you'll see, you know, people that are unidirectional instead of bidirectional. And I think that's wonderful. And that just really speaks a lot towards your integrity and who you are as an operator and a syndicator as well. And as
that means a lot.
Yeah.
That means a lot coming from you, Michael. I appreciate it. I do think that that's kind of what everyone in our team is kind of focusing on, is how can we kind of make this greater. Like, I believe none of this belongs to us anyways. So as a result, we're just trying to grow it and make it better. You know, the other thing that I think that's really helpful for people to understand is when you're vulnerable with people, when you're able to kind of give that vulnerability to people, people are much more willing to follow. You know, I minister this group, this teens in that just at our church every week, and they were very closed off when we first started doing it. And I realized the minute that I started telling about some of my foibles, or, you know, my addiction early in life, or whatever those were, it was just like the light went on. You know, they have to believe that you're really there to try to help, you know? And so that's sometimes that's hard for communities to get, right? But if you've got that track record and you've got other people that are starting to see, so now my team's like, oh, have you guys heard of Apartment Life? Or, oh, have you guys done? So it's kind of it just builds on itself, right? So that's kind of what I hope people can take away from today.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that Ramsey Plus thing, like, that's incredible. I think I wish I had that when I was, you know,
Oh gosh,
a renter, you know, like, I mean, luckily I made, you know, enough money in my W-2 where like it didn't, like, if I had a debt accumulating, which was, you know, horrible, but like I had enough to cover my expenses and things like that still, like, but I was still accumulating debt, like, and I wasn't debt free until just recently, you know? So it's like, because of all of the misinformation and stuff like that, is out there. And I can only imagine, you know, even lower income people who have even less access to that kind of information that I had access to. It's just going to really help them a lot. So that's awesome. And maybe
I remember when I came home from college, my parents had just gotten divorced, and my mom still did not know how to balance her checkbook. Right. I mean, I had to balance her checkbook. Like, this is not just like a economic thing. This is like, people do not have the tools or it's not in their world. It wasn't in my world. It wasn't
Right.
that my parents were rejecting that world. They just didn't know that world. And so something like Ramsey Plus, like, how simple is that? Like, you got your debits, you got your credits, you got your expenses, you got your income, you got your savings. Like, but people people have the discipline, and they probably know the right things to do, but in general, they don't know the power of leverage. They don't know the power of, you know, compound leverage. They don't know the power of, you know, multiple streams of income, all of these things that can be read in a book, true, but they've got to be part of your world. They got to be kind of part of your sphere, you know, and they're just still not for many I mean, I go to investor meetings and still people don't know about real estate, right? I kind of have a blind spot because I've been in so long, but a lot of people don't have any idea what a cash on cash return is. You know, they might have a W-2. They're probably professionals, you know, maybe successful professionals, accredited investors. But you guys know that. I mean, a lot of your investors, I'm sure you've done a lot of educating because they've been of means, but they don't have the knowledge and wisdom yet.
Exactly.
And there's just so much of it. That's the thing too. Like, I think sometimes we like tell ourselves to think outside of the box, but we should just tell ourselves that there is no box, because then there is no limit to anything that we learn, anything that we like try to find out about. Because even when you're saying it's not in their world, because even when it's not in their world, they can't even ask because they don't even know what to ask, you know.
Right.
It all just blows my mind.
Yeah, I didn't know what I didn't know when I first started in this business, and everything kind of starts to come into focus after you've spent some time in it. But you can kind of imagine a kid in a completely different, you know, walk of life without education. I know how big you guys are on education, and it's not just, you know, where you went to college, et cetera. It's just like constantly educating yourself. But if that's not kind of part of the habits and the discipline, you know, it's really hard to kind of teach somebody that later, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
So Andy, unfortunately, I would love to chat with you all evening.
Really.
We are going to have you back on for sure. And maybe I want to do a YouTube video with you.
Oh yeah, in
about
person.
Yeah, in
Oh, that would be
person.
awesome.
Yeah.
I love that.
We should
Yeah, you guys
definitely
are
do
coming
that.
out, right?
Yeah,
would
that's right.
definitely- Awesome.
So I'm gonna actually take note of that, and we'll chat and figure that out. So listeners, be on the lookout. We'll have a YouTube video release here in the next couple of months. So anyways, this unfortunately brings us to the last segment of the show, which is the Adventurous Four. These are 4 exploratory questions we ask all of our guests. So Andy, the first question we have for you is, where is one place you wish to travel to and why?
You know, my wife and I were supposed to go to Israel last year with the pandemic, so I haven't been, and not just, you know, for the sepulcher, not just for, you know, the Western Wall. I'd like to see all of the business. There's 4,000 startups there. I have a couple of friends that are doing, you know, businesses over there, and just there's this amazing energy that I'd love to be a part of and witness. So that's the place I'd like to go.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Cool.
It is. And the second question is, what is the number one thing on your bucket list, and how are you leveraging real estate investing to achieve it?
Well, you know, we talked about transforming communities. I think that's like, as far as like the leveraging from real estate, that's what we've kind of got on our, you know, we have our EOS, which is kind of an entrepreneurial operating system with our team, and we've got our goals, and that's kind of our number one is, can we get to 50? Can we get to 50 transforming 50 communities? So that would be one. Personally, I think you guys know I'm a big sports guy, so I would love to travel to all the best, you know, stadiums and watch some of the best games. You know, I've been to in Spain,
Wow.
Camp Nou, and I would love to go to Wembley. So you guys might have to invite me out to Wembley.
You're welcome anytime. Yeah.
You know, so that's a big thing. And I've been trying to get my son to go to some of the ballparks with me, but he's not as interested now. But those would be some bucket list items.
You should come to St. Andrews for the Open next year.
That would be awesome too.
The 150 Open is going to be at St. Andrews, just up the street from us. Well,
Up the street.
4 hours plus. Whatever. So,
Oh, that's great. Okay, you shouldn't have said that. You put it out on the air, man.
Right.
do it. Come on. You're welcome. Let's do it. So the third question we have for you, Andy, is what is one piece of advice for someone who wants to start passively investing in real estate?
Yeah, smart people do dumb things. So what I mean by that is, when I came in, I didn't trust my instincts, right? Like, I had this information about, I've done the study, I've done the deal, I've done the research, and then I'll take it to an expert, so-called expert. And the thing about experts is they've got to have opinion on stuff that they don't understand the nuances of, right? So I kind of deferred early on to too many kind of so-called experts and saying, yeah, this deal probably doesn't look right because you can't do this or that. And they didn't know what I kind of knew internally, the nuances of. So I would just say, trust your instincts. You definitely can do more than you think you're doing right now, where you're sitting and listening to this.
Absolutely. No, that's huge. And then the final question is, if you had unlimited resources available to you, how would you leave an impact?
Yeah, you know, one thing I love about what we're doing now is just the interaction with my team, and seeing kind of the light go on. And I'm kind of a big believer in the bottom up kind of approach to leading. So whatever I can do to kind of help them grow and succeed and give them the tools. So if I had unlimited resources, honestly, I would bring more people. There's people out there right now that would love to just kind of work in a situation where they're a tweener, but somebody like us that's, between 1 and 2,000 units, that they could come and, utilize whatever their talents are to help grow a company, rather than paying which I think a lot of them are good, but maybe they want to use that 30,000 to go and work with somebody, but they don't know how and they don't know who. And so I would love to be able to bring people and help show them how this can work, not from, an expert pay me a fee, but from, hey, look, you grow this, learn, and go and do your own thing,
No, that's great. Yeah, because we hear often, or even see people often like go into these mentor groups, which if it works, it's great. But then like they have a mentor who lives in a different place and invests in a different place. Like at that point, it gets really, really difficult. So I do love that.
Yeah, you guys, Jim Biggs has helped you guys out a lot too, but he's got that just great idea, which is, the people that are going to really make it in those groups are going to make it without those groups. And so if you can really spend a lot of that time with the relationships, building the relationships and figuring out a way to help another operator, there's a place for you, because I suck at all the back office stuff. So somebody could be great at the marketing or, underwriting or whatever that is, whatever your talent is, there's room for it.
I love it. Yeah. So I know there's a bunch of adventurous families sitting out there listening to this or whatever they're doing, running, biking, whatever they love to do while listening to our podcast. They're wondering, how can we get a hold of Andy McMullen? So what is the best way that our adventurous family can get a hold of you, Andy?
Yeah, please. So our website is Legacy AX for acquisition, legacyax.com. I think Legacy Acquisitions now will work as well. And we've got a couple of, passive investing spreads where we've kind of broke down a lot of what we talked about with the Ramsey Plus, like how much would I need to invest here? What are some of the other kind of levers that I could pull? I think there's a really pretty comprehensive underwriting packet that I did on Vinny Chopra's on one of his summits that I think is pretty. It's a little more granular. I think people will like it, and I'm all over LinkedIn, so anybody can reach out on LinkedIn. I'm not to Michael's stage yet. Like he's got like a witty quip for like every engagement reply, but I'm working on it, and I'm watching you, Mike. So I might steal a couple of things.
Please go ahead, because I only learn from the best, So, yeah, that's awesome. We'll make sure we have all those links definitely in the show notes, so anybody can just click there and go straight to your website.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Hey, it's such a pleasure being on with you guys. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, no, and we are so thrilled that you could join us. And again, it's been a pleasure, and we cannot wait to see you soon in person. It's fantastic.
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Cool. So until next time, explore more, adventure awaits.
Woo!